Hi, I'm Tressa Torres. I am the 2020 Colorado State Fair first attendant. And today we are going to be reading from the She Persisted collection, Harriet Tubman, written by Andrea Davis Pinkney. So this book is about a young woman who was very instrumental in the beginning and running of the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad was a system where she had led many enslaved individuals to freedom, which they had called the Promised Land. And she had earned her wisdom and guidance through all the trials and tribulations that she had to withstand throughout her whole life. And that's what this story is about, and this tells us how she earned her spot in history. Bound for the Promised Land. Word amongst enslaved people traveled through the whispering lips of did you know, did you hear? Folks got information from one person telling another, who then passed it on to the next, until news had quietly reached many. That's how Harriet learned about abolitionists, women and men, who were working to end slavery. These were black and white people who had created a system for hiding runaways who were making their way to freedom. The did you know, did you hear whispers turned into a network of hide and help that people called the Underground Railroad. The railroad wasn't made of iron cars, no smokestacks, no choo-choo trains, no cross-tie tracks. This railroad was navigated using stars to lead the way in the blackest of night. This railroad was built by kind folks helping to hide enslaved people who were seeking freedom. The Underground Railroad's engine was fueled by heartbeats and dreams, chugging toward change. Its passengers were enslaved people sleeping under burlap sacks, hiding in the salt shacks, keeping their souls' hope alive. The Underground Railroad's powerful engine of people helping people was like a quiet storm that came through the whispers of generous folks saying, "Together we can." Word spread that a white woman who lived near to the Broadus plantation was helping runaways use the Underground Railroad. And when folks talked, Harriet listened, but she never spoke about it to her husband, John. One night, while John was asleep, Harriet showed the North Star to two of her brothers and encouraged them to escape with her. They agreed, and the three of them set out silently. But not long into their journey, Harriet's brothers got scared. They refused to keep going. They made Harriet come back with them to the plantation. 2 days had passed, and Harriet couldn't help but wonder if she had missed her opportunity to flee by returning with her brothers. But when Harriet heard rumors that she was about to be sold and sent to Cotton Country, her resolve became even stronger. She resisted being sold by immediately making a plan to flee. Within herself, she insisted that the time had truly come to get gone. She persisted in holding fast to her dream of freedom. Harriet had to keep her determination a secret. To do this, she spoke in code. This was something many enslaved people did, by singing spirituals while they worked. They secretly let others know they were planning an escape. The words of these songs were their way of saying goodbye. When that Pharaoh chariot comes, I'm gonna leave you, bound for the Promised Land. Friends, I'm gonna leave you. I'm sorry I gotta leave you. Farewell, oh farewell, but I'll meet you in the morning. Farewell, oh farewell. And that's just what Harriet did. She packed a small Kroger sack with salted pork, bread, and corn pone, and snuck away to the home of the white woman who was part of the Underground Railroad. The woman, who was a Quaker, helped Harriet find another woman whose husband could drive her farther north in his carriage. When Harriet arrived at the next house, the woman who lived there thrust a broom into her hands and insisted that she started sweeping. This frightened Harriet. She was worried that an evil trick had been played on her. Harriet was afraid she had been caught and would be sent back to slavery. But these people were on Harriet's side. The sweeping was a trick, but not on Harriet. Having her appear to be busily working as if she was the lady slave was their way of fooling any white folks who were on the hunt for escaping black people. The trick worked. Later, after the sunset and the North Star rose high, The lady's husband tucked Harriet in the bed of his wagon under a heap of blankets. He piled burlap potato sacks on top. Harriet was hidden real good. As the carriage bumped and rolled along on the dirt road, Harriet kept very still. This was her first trip on the Underground Railroad. It lasted all night. When dawn came, the man told Harriet that the route to take that would lead her to freedom over the days ahead. The trip was not easy. Harriet had to travel on foot through wet, marshy soil. She was forced to put up with biting mosquitoes and thorny bushes that poked at her skin. Harriet faced cold nights and a growling stomach. She'd eaten everything packed in her croaker sack. The Underground Railroad helpers had also given her food to carry, but the supply was running low. Harriet soon had to live on whatever berries and other natural food she could find in the woods. With determination churning like a furnace, Harriet ran and ran with all of her might up the eastern shore towards Pennsylvania, nearly 90 miles from Master Broadus' plantation. Her owner had most likely sent bloodhounds and a group of searchers to look for her. The scar on her forehead was a way to identify who she was. As a disguise, Harriet sometimes pulled a man's hat down low on her head, or she wore the veil of an elegant lady to cover her scar. This kept her safe. Harriet still struggled with her sleeping disease and the headaches it caused. Knowing she could fall asleep at any moment was scary. But fear never stopped Harriet, and the disease never got in the way of her progress. Exhausted and excited, Harriet finally reached Pennsylvania, which was a free state. It was a morning in 1849. The sky rolled out like a glistening pie crust to greet her. Years later, when Harriet recalled that special moment, she said, "I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person, now that I was free. There was such a glory over everything. The sun came up like gold through the trees and over the fields, and I felt like I was in heaven." The woman called Moses. Harriet couldn't fully enjoy her freedom while her family still suffered under the weight of slavery. She often thought about old Rit, old Ben, and her sisters and brothers, and she missed them. Years later, when Harriet was reflecting on that time in her life, she said, "I was free, but there was no one to welcome me to the land of freedom. I was a stranger in a strange land." Harriet's family was in Maryland, continuing the backbreaking work enslaved people were forced to endure. Harriet vowed to somehow help them get to freedom. It was one thing to escape alone, only having to hide herself and be accountable for her own care. But helping groups of people find freedom was a much greater responsibility. Harriet wondered how she could take on something so big and so hard. Being a woman of faith, Harriet prayed. "Oh, dear Lord," she said, "I ain't got no friend but you. Come to my help, Lord, for I'm in trouble." Harriet Tubman didn't shy back from trouble. She was good at meeting challenges face on. And that's just what she did. She got a job in Philadelphia, cooking and cleaning in a hotel's kitchen. Harriet's work days were long, strenuous, and boring. But for the first time in her life, she was earning money that was not slave labor. Harriet was now a working woman who took pride in the wages she made and the cash she was able to save. Harriet found out an organization called the Philadelphia Vigilance Committee, a group of women and men who helped enslaved people escape along the Underground Railroad. The committee's leaders were James Miller McKim, a white minister, and William Still, a black man who had been born free in Philadelphia. Harriet and William got to be friends. William introduced Harriet to people who, like her, had successfully escaped freedom. These folks shared their stories and gave Harriet details about the routes and the methods they used to run away without being caught. Members of the Philadelphia Vigilance Committee formed a very strong network of Did You Know, Did You Hear? They had lots of information about the doings down south. They let Harriet know that her niece, Keziah, was about to be sold and sent to Cotton Country. Harriet immediately made a plan to return to Maryland to get her niece and bring her to freedom before it was too late. Keziah's husband, John Bowley, was a free black man. By making connections through the kind-hearted people along the Underground Railroad, he came up with a way of getting Keziah and their 2 children to Baltimore, Maryland. But once they arrived in Baltimore, they would need a strong, brave person to help transport them safely from Baltimore to Pennsylvania, to freedom. Harriet didn't have to think twice about what to do. She was more than ready to guide her family members to the free land. William still urged Harriet not to risk her own freedom and safety by helping others. William told Harriet it was too dangerous. Well, she told him that rescuing her niece wasn't up for debate. When Keziah, John, and their children arrived in Baltimore, Harriet was there to greet them. Like other escapes, this one wasn't easy. Harriet was now traveling with kids who had to stay awake during the night's darkest hours so they could keep moving forward toward freedom with the rest of the group. When it rained, they traveled in wet clothes that stuck to their skin. Blisters formed on their feet from walking so many miles, and when a shiver or cough came on, sometimes they ignored it. There was no time to waste, even if someone got sick. Harriet and her family kept their spirits up by singing and praying together. After uncertain days and nights of travel, Harriet got her family safely to Philadelphia. This rescue encouraged Harriet to help even more people, which she did in 1851. She rescued her brother Moses and several others, guiding them through dark nights and frightening times, but always transporting them to the sunlight of liberation that shone through the dark clouds once they reached free soil. It was her goal to rescue everyone in her family, but Harriet would not bring along her husband John, who had moved in with another woman. Harriet now traveled twice each year, once in the spring, once during the autumn months. She brought enslaved people through ditches, swamps, mud heaps, shivering nights, and humid hiding places. Once Harriet and a group of freedom seekers had to cover themselves under heaps of cow droppings to stay out of sight. Even that didn't stop Harriet. She soon gained a reputation for being one of the most persistent conductors on the Underground Railroad. Harriet came to be known as the Lady Moses because, like the Bible's Moses, she led her people to freedom. In the eyes of many white people who believed in slavery, Harriet was no kind of hero. They considered her a troublemaker who had to be stopped. They posted signs offering to pay anybody who spotted the woman called Moses. Harriet refused to let this dampen her spirit. Old Ben and Old Rit were still living on the Broadus plantation. Harriet had been waiting for the best time to rescue her parents so that they were strong enough to make the trip. They were now very old and frail, and she didn't want to wait any longer. Making the journey north would require careful planning and plenty of time. On a night in 1857, Harriet summoned her courage. She found an old horse and crept onto the Broadus property, and with her bare hands, she had built a rickety wagon of worn wood. She carefully tucked her parents in the back and raced away. The horse's hooves beat out a galloping rhythm. It was like a drumbeat anthem for Old Rit and Old Ben. Their strong daughter was successfully transporting them to freedom, with the help of others along the Underground Railroad. Harriet had become so good at making escapes that her capture was now worth lots of money for anyone who could find and stop the woman called Moses. The power of progress. Harriet Tubman was unstoppable. She had fearlessly led countless people to freedom along the Underground Railroad for about 10 years. She once said, "I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger." Even when people encouraged Harriet to give up her work, she refused. Men warned Harriet that her life was in danger and that she was risking getting hurt or even getting killed, being so bold. That was like telling a bird to stop flying because its wings might break, or someone could shoot it down if it tried to fly too high. Harriet would keep reaching for the heights of the North Star's promise no matter what others said. She didn't listen to anybody who didn't believe in the power of progress. In 1861, when the Civil War broke out between America's southern and northern states, Harriet worked to help the northern soldiers. The South believed black people should stay enslaved forever. The North was fighting to end slavery. America was divided into two separate sides. Many black men enlisted in the Northern Army to help the cause for freedom. Harriet served as a nurse for injured soldiers. She cleaned their wounds and boiled root teas to help soothe diseases that gave them stomach aches. January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, a document that called for the freedom of enslaved people who lived in certain parts of America. The proclamation didn't free everyone, and the war continued. Harriet became a spy for the Northern Army, known as the Union, and worked under the command of Colonel James Montgomery. It would be Harriet's job to secretly get information from the Southern Army, which was now called the Confederacy. At just a bit of over 5 feet, she was the perfect size for spying. Harriet's height made her less noticeable in a group, especially when others around her were tall. With the knowledge she gained, Harriet could help the North win the war. Spying was dangerous, but dangerous had never stopped Harriet before. The insider information Harriet gathered helped her lead the Union troops into enemy territory, allowing them to raid the Confederate Army. This increased their chances of winning the war that would put an end to slavery. Harriet was tough, gritty, and brave, but it was hard to do her work in the long skirts and lady clothing she wore. Thankfully, Harriet heard about a woman named Amelia Bloomer, who advocated for a sensible costume for females. This outfit was called bloomers. It consisted of a small jacket and pants with a short skirt on top. This sensible clothing was far from what people thought was proper or ladylike at the time. As a woman helping fight men in a war against war, comfort and practicality made total sense. Harriet said, "I made up my mind that I would never wear a long dress on an expedition, but would have a bloomer as soon as I could get one." In April 1865, the Civil War ended. The North, the Union, had won the war. The Confederacy gave up its plans to form its own country and rejoin the Union as part of one of the United States of America. At the end of that year, in December, slavery was abolished. All people were free. Harriet settled in Auburn, New York, with Old Rit and Old Ben. She created a nursing home for the elderly, but didn't earn enough money to support herself or her aging parents. Harriet requested that she be paid by the government for the work she had done during the Civil War as a nurse and a spy. These wages were typically given to men after they completed war service. Because Harriet's work wasn't recorded, everyone refused to pay her for the job she had done in the past. Harriet spoke up about this unfair treatment. She appealed to the federal government in 1865, then again 2 years later, but she still was refused. Influential friends published articles in newspapers telling why Harriet deserved the same money that was given to men who were war veterans. Years before, Harriet had remarried a man named Nelson Davis, who had also served in the war. Nelson passed away in 1889. After he died, Harriet became eligible to receive a small amount of pension money as his widow. Harriet still pursued her own pension money, but continued to receive negative responses. This went on for 34 years. Harriet did not give up. Finally, Harriet was granted an increase in the pension fund she had received as the widow of a soldier. It was not enough to live on. She never received money for the work she did. This was hard on Harriet, but she stayed strong within herself. The time had come to tell her story so that future girls and women would be inspired to pursue their dreams and goals, even when others told them no. Even though Harriet had never learned to read or write, her mind and memory were sharper than a batch of new pencils. She worked with a white woman named Sarah Bradford to tell her life story. It was a true tale of struggle, courage, resilience, and victory, presented in the 2 books Sarah published in 1869 and 1886, entitled Harriet, Scenes in the Life of Harriet Tubman, and Harriet Tubman, the Moses of Her People. Harriet's books became very popular and are still read today. To encourage people to read her book, Harriet often gave speeches. She told people about her life and times. Harriet was a powerful speaker who reminded her audiences that women are as strong and as smart as men. Harriet herself was living proof. She earned money for the books she wrote and the speeches she delivered. She once said, "There was one of 2 things I had a right to, liberty or death. If I could not have one, I would have the other." When Harriet died of pneumonia in 1913, government officials in Auburn, New York, placed a glistening bronze plaque on the front entrance of the Auburn courthouse to honor her. It says, "She braved every danger and overcame every obstacle." Harriet's legacy can still be seen in the North Star's light. She inspired people when she once said, "I should fight for my liberty as long as my strength lasted." Harriet Tubman persisted by showing the world that the brightest stars shine forever. This is a really great book. If you guys want to read more about her, I would check up Barnes & Noble or possibly Amazon. They have a lot of good stuff about her. And I hope you guys learned a lot about Harriet and her life. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And as we all say, today a reader, tomorrow a leader.